All right, so today we're diving into something pretty cool, I think. I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's called Zentangle. Now, for you, always trying to grasp things to quickly and, completely, this is a really neat method. I think you'll find it fascinating. It's a structured way, but approachable way to, increase your focus, cultivate a more positive mindset, and just unlock some creativity. And the best part is it's all without that, inner critic always, getting in the way.
Yeah, it's really about kind of streamlining that path to what they call creative mindfulness.
I like that creative mindfulness.
Yeah, and one of the really cool things about Zentangle, I think, is that it helps to kind of demystify art.
Mm.
It breaks it down into these steps, and they're surprisingly simple.
Okay, so that kind of what we're going to be looking at today, those steps?
Yeah, definitely. Our goal is to kind of unpack those 8 steps, the core principles.
Yeah.
What makes this method so effective.
Perfect. So let's jump right in then. Step 1 is gratitude and appreciation. And I got to say, that's not what I was expecting for like an art practice. Why start there?
Right. It's interesting, isn't it? Not just like a nice sentiment, though. It's really an intentional act to help shift you, mentally.
Yeah.
So when you take a moment to just appreciate something as basic as the paper or the pen that you're going to use, it really does cultivate this sense of presence and mindfulness.
Okay, so it's more than just like a feel-good thing.
Yeah, exactly. There's even some research that suggests that expressing gratitude can release, dopamine, serotonin, all those neurotransmitters connected to positive emotions.
Ah, so that's why it helps quiet the mind.
It could very well be. It's really about setting a positive intention from the get-go, right from the start.
Right. And so it's almost like prepping your mind for creation. Like the source material actually compared it to preparing one's heart in worship, like that
Yeah.
moment of stillness before you begin.
Exactly, yeah. So by consciously appreciating the process before you even make a mark,
Yeah.
you're creating a mental space that's, less likely to be invaded by self-doubt and all of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So step 2 then brings us to the blank page. Now, I gotta say, those can be a little intimidating sometimes. This step is called the 4 corner dots. How do just these simple dots help with that?
Yeah, I mean, just imagine like a huge empty space. It can feel overwhelming, right?
Definitely.
These 4 simple dots, you just do them in pencil. They act as these anchors, almost like these immediate points of reference that help break down that feeling of vastness.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's a small beginning, almost imperceptible, but it gives you that crucial first little bit of structure, a place to kind of orient yourself on the page.
Okay. So from those 4 points, then we go to step 3, the border. So we're connecting those dots with lines. I mean, it sounds simple enough, but what's the impact of creating this boundary?
Well, it might seem kind of counterintuitive, but this border can actually provide a sense of freedom.
Really?
Yeah, because by defining the edges of your workspace, you're kind of creating a container for that creativity, right? It's this reminder that even within certain limits, beauty and innovation can still flourish.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like psychologically, boundaries, they can actually create a feeling of safety. So then you're able to have a little bit more, fearless exploration within those limits.
Interesting. Okay. So a border is kind of a source of freedom, not restriction.
Exactly.
All right. Step 4 then introduces us to the string. So what is that, and why do we need these guiding lines?
So the string involves just lightly sketching these random lines, flowing lines, within that border that you just created.
Yeah.
And you just use your pencil for this. And these lines, they don't need to follow any particular pattern or even have a specific purpose at this point.
Okay.
The beauty of them is in their unpredictability. And so they're going to divide up that space into these unique sections, oftentimes unexpected sections, that then provide this framework for where you're going to put the patterns later. It's like this surprise map.
I like that. Yeah, it's like setting up these compartments without actually predetermining what's going to go in them.
Exactly.
Now, the source material for this actually compared this to the seasons of life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, being shaped by design, an underlying structure that allows for just endless variation.
That's a really beautiful way to look at it. And that randomness of the string is key here because it prevents you from overthinking the composition from the start. It really encourages you to embrace the unexpected and just see where the lines kind of lead you.
Okay, so now we get to what seems like the heart of Zentangle, step 5, which is drawing the patterns, or as they call them, tangles. So what are these tangles and how do we approach drawing them?
So tangles are really just structured patterns that are made up of simple, repeated strokes. So think of them almost as the basic vocabulary of Zentangle.
Gotcha.
And here you're going to switch to a fine tip pen, and you're going to start to fill in each of those sections that you created with your string with these patterns, one deliberate stroke at a time. And it's really fascinating. The focus on the single stroke encourages this real sense of mindfulness and presence in each moment.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people compare it to like the rhythmic flow of a dance, where one movement just naturally leads into the next, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you have this larger cohesive whole.
Wow, yeah. It does sound really meditative, like this repetition of simple strokes.
Yeah, it really is.
Now, the source material even suggests that it reflects like this inherent creativity within us all.
I love that. And I think by focusing on just one stroke at a time, you can enter this flow state.
Yeah,
And the act of creation then becomes less about that end result, that end product, and more about just enjoying the process itself. It's very grounding.
I can see that.
Well,
Okay, so step 6 then introduces shading. So we have these patterns in black and white. What does adding in the shading with a pencil, what does that do?
well, the shading really just adds this depth and dimension to your tangles.
Hmm.
Right? So by strategically placing some soft pencil shading, you create these areas of light and shadow, which then make those patterns appear more three-dimensional. They kind of pop off the tile.
Right.
Yeah, and there's this really great analogy in the source material about how light and shadow actually create form in the physical world and how challenges shape and refine us.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful way to think about it.
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting how that just subtle addition of gray can really transform it visually.
All right, moving on to step 7 then. Signing our work. Now it's a small tile. Why is signing it so important?
Even on a small tile, and these are only 3.5 inches, signing your work is the significant act of acknowledging your creative expression. It's about recognizing that you brought this unique piece into being. So whether it's just your initials, maybe a little symbol that you like, or even just writing on the back, it's really a way of claiming ownership and just celebrating that creation.
It reinforces this idea that even small acts of creativity have value and that they're uniquely yours.
Exactly.
And the source material draws a really beautiful connection to the idea of, being known and valued as an individual.
Yes, exactly. It's that tangible way of saying, hey, I did this.
Appreciating your own contribution.
And finally, step 8, appreciation and reflection. So what does this final step entail?
So this is the time to kind of step back, take a moment, and really observe what you've created. So look at it from different angles. Notice the interplay of that light and shadow that you just created, the way those patterns interact with each other. It's about acknowledging the beauty of your unique tile, appreciating the effort that you put into it and the joy that you experienced along the way. And so it's really interesting that that initial feeling of gratitude kind of comes full circle here as you're appreciating this finished piece.
Oh, wow, I like that. Okay, so those are the 8 steps. It's a surprisingly structured but also gentle approach to just unleashing that creativity.
It is. It really is.
Now, the source material also talks about the spirit of creation, which highlights some key principles beyond just the steps.
Okay.
The first is slow down. Why is that so important?
I think in our world today, everything's so fast-paced. The act of slowing down is so valuable. Zentangle encourages you to savor each stroke. Just be fully present in that moment of creation without rushing to get to the end, to get to the result. And so this allows your creativity to unfold more organically, and it can be very calming, meditative.
Yeah, it sounds like it's as much about the journey as the destination.
It really is, yeah.
Now, the second principle is draw bigger, which might seem a little counterintuitive on such a small tile. What's the reasoning behind that?
Right. You would think you'd want to draw smaller. But what happens is a lot of times beginners tend to draw those patterns very small, very tight.
Oh, okay.
And so the encouragement to draw bigger is about giving your designs that space to breathe, to express themselves more fully.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it can lead to a greater sense of joy in the process. And honestly, it can actually make the patterns a little easier to execute.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really about allowing your creativity to take up space.
And the source material also mentions, the 3.5-inch tile is not just a random size, right?
Right, no, it's very intentional. That small size is all about portability.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so these tiles can easily fit into a pocket or a bag, so you can take it with you. So it makes it very convenient to do this Zentangle in these little moments of stillness throughout your day.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're waiting for an appointment or, during a commute or anytime you just need that brief moment of calm, focus, and creative expression.
I love that it's like a little portable sanctuary for creativity.
Exactly.
Now, the final aspect the source material explores is sharing and community. So why is that element so important to this Zentangle practice?
Sharing your work is about creating that sense of connection and belonging. So whether it's just showing a friend, maybe posting it online, participating in gatherings, whatever it is, it allows for appreciation and encouragement. And in these community settings, people will often take all their tiles and combine them into these beautiful mosaics.
Oh, wow. So that's a beautiful way to show how those individual contributions, all unique, can come together and make something even bigger and more significant.
I think so too, yeah. And actually, the source material even drew a parallel to diverse individuals forming a unified community.
I love that.
Yeah, it's very cool. And something that's often observed in these mosaics is that what may have felt like a mistake in your individual tile often blends in seamlessly into the larger design. It actually contributes to the overall richness. And so it shifts that focus from individual perfection to the harmony of the whole.
So it's a powerful reminder of the beauty and purpose, both in, individuality, but also our connection to each other.
Yeah, and it reframes how you look at errors, right? They're not bad. They're just part of the process that could contribute to the bigger picture.
Okay, so to kind of bring this all together then, we've explored these 8 distinct steps as a structured yet very accessible path to cultivating that creative mindfulness. We've talked about, slowing down, giving your creativity that space to expand, and then the role of sharing your creations and how that can connect you to this community.
Yeah. And it's really cool because it connects back to, I know you like to learn things thoroughly and efficiently.
Yes.
Zentangle is this surprisingly accessible entry point to a creative practice.
Perfect.
Doesn't require any prior art experience. It's really about embracing this method, which fosters focus, positive mindset, and a sense of accomplishment through simple, intentional acts of creation.
So it seems like this practice could really enhance appreciation for just the beauty in the everyday.
Yeah, thanks.
Help tap into that inherent creativity.
Absolutely.
Even provide a sense of connection to something bigger than yourself.
Definitely. And that leads me to a final thought for you. How do you think incorporating a creative practice like this, it's structured, but it's also freeing, how might that reshape how you view focus, how you view imperfections, and how you might even find joy in those small acts of creation in your own life? Maybe, just maybe, like the source material put it, drawing could become a safe refuge for you.
I really like that. A safe refuge. All right, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
It was so fun.
It was. Until next time.